Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and we have a very special guest today, and it is Jeff Ravitz.
And this is David, coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. Hey, everybody, welcome to our 3rd anniversary show. Yay! Lots of applause.
Yeah, why not?
That's right, 156 episodes, 126 countries and territories, and 160,000 downloads later, we begin our 4th season. Who would have bet that we would last this long?
Not me.
As a matter of fact, people were betting against us. It was an open bet.
People said we wouldn't have anything to say after the 3rd episode.
And they were correct.
Right.
So since this is our anniversary show, as you know, we always love to have something special for our listeners. And today we have just that for you. Another legend of lighting joining us, Emmy award-winning lighting designer Jeff Ravitz. Hey, Jeff, welcome to Light Talk.
Hey, guys. Hey, brothers. Thanks. I'm really honored to be here on this anniversary show. Now you got me nervous. 126 countries, did you say?
And territories.
Wow,
But in some countries, there's only 4 people.
Those territories, really.
Jeff, we have 6 listeners in the Faroe Islands.
Wow.
The Faroe Islands.
I'm impressed, and I'm going to look it up as soon as we finish.
Jeff, I couldn't find out anywhere online. Do you play a musical instrument by any chance?
Well, it's definitely not shown online, but I was a keyboard player at one time in my life.
So a new member of the Luminoids.
Oh, count me in.
Okay.
We could add him to the ensemble.
We need a second keyboardist. I'm a keyboard player too, Jeff. And we could do 2 keyboards. We could get a big 80s sort of synthesizer thing going if you like.
I love it. I love it. We can get one of those Hammonds.
I got 2 in my house. But you know something? Zach Bovary is our bass guitar player. And if you hear on the theme song, that's Zach playing bass and lead guitar.
No kidding.
So we're getting a whole group of lighting designers together.
Wow. And he's wicked.
This could be like the Glenn Mitchell band, and we have to find a vocalist. We'll have to find someone to come in to sing with the big band.
We need a sultry female singer for that. I mean, a real sultry one. That would be great.
We do. That's
true.
true.
Hey, before we get started, or distracted as we're doing right now, let's have Stan tell you a little bit about Jeff's illustrious career.
Okay, so just to say, I haven't rehearsed this, so wish me luck. So Jeff Ravitz has been an active member of the lighting design community for over 30 years and has worked in almost every genre and aspect of the field. Hailing from the great state of New Jersey, Jeff graduated from Northwestern University and hoped for a career in theater. But shortly after getting his degree, Jeff jumped on an opportunity to design lighting for a Chicago touring band, which reconnected him with the world that he had loved as a teenage musician. A mixed bag of crewing, designing, and crisscrossing the country in station wagons and vans brought Jeff to the attention of the band Styx, for whom he worked as tour, lighting, and production designer for their most fertile and groundbreaking years, and for whom he still designs to this day. Jeff is perhaps best known as Bruce Springsteen's lighting designer, going back to the Born in the USA tour through to the present day.
Wow.
He has since created a reputation for transforming live entertainment performances and arena extravaganzas into exciting but also broadcast proper television shows. As an extremely busy designer, he has created the lighting for award shows, live televised spectaculars, concerts, game and talk shows, comedy specials, fashion, operas, ice shows, and studio-based TV productions for household name performers such as Springsteen, Kevin Hart, Ringo Starr, Dave Chappelle, John Fogerty, Kristen Chenoweth, and Wanda Sykes. Jeff has also created specialty lighting for several feature films, including Jonathan Demme's Manchurian Candidate, Neil Young's Heart of Gold, and the Hasbro-produced feature Gem and the Holograms. Jeff was a founding member of the eclectic design firm Visual Terrain and now heads the design studio Intensity Advisors. Jeff is a popular lecturer and was honored with a Primetime Emmy Award and 2 nominations, as well as 10 regional Emmy Awards for lighting design. Once again, welcome to the show. And David has our first question for our friend Jeff Ravitz.
Wow, what a career. What a career.
Yeah, amazing.
And it continues. This guy's not slowing down.
No way.
What are you working on now? That's still in production.
Yeah. At the moment, I'm sort of lying back and staring at the ceiling. There's not much going on in the entertainment industry at the moment, as I'm sure you know.
Right.
But I got lucky on one thing. I've been working on a book for the last year, and I'm in the final phases of crunching it down to the finish. So I have plenty to do for the next couple of weeks.
May we ask what the subject of the book is?
It's about a subject that's near and dear to my heart. It's lighting design for televised live entertainment.
Fantastic. We need that book.
Wow. You're going to share all your magic. That's great.
That's what I'm hoping to do.
God, I'm looking forward to this.
Me too.
So listen, why don't we just get started? We can't ignore the 2,000-pound telescan in the room. We're in the beginning of what is a devastating pandemic that has already shut down our industry. Broadway is dark. Las Vegas shows are closed. Italy's locked down. Millions of Americans and Europeans are unemployed. And considering all this, Jeff, what do you think the future of entertainment lighting is?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm certainly not a fortune teller, so I can't tell precisely. I hope everybody saved a little bit of money, but I do think it's going to come back. I truly do. And I think that the silver lining in all of this is that we all work very hard. Sometimes you work 2 or 3 jobs overlapping. You can get a little frustrated. I have a feeling that when it all comes back, we're going to be instilled with a sense of gratitude about the jobs that we do have and the people that we're working with. And I think it's going to put a little extra spark into all of our step. Aside from that, look for things to write about, online, teaching, those sorts of things might tide us over. And then when it comes back, I think we're just going to be drawing a straight line from here to eternity.
Yeah, we're sort of all taking a break, aren't we? Just a short break.
Yeah, this could be the healthiest thing in a weird sense.
So, Jeff, you've had such a wide-ranging career, and I'm just curious, what types of projects bring you the most satisfaction?
Some of the smallest projects have brought me the greatest fulfillment. In an odd way, I like it simple. I like the less is more philosophy, and I've always sort of lived by that. Sometimes when you pare it down to the essence, it just has a quality that overdoing it just doesn't have. And so some of the productions with some of the simplest solutions have really resulted in the best looks I've ever done. I did a music series years ago at the Sundance Festival in the basement of a bar. We had a 9-foot ceiling. It seemed impossible, but I had a little bit of innovative genius from my vendor. We just worked on it, got the equipment in there, and it was just a combination of good angles, great acts, and a lot of cooperation. And it ended up being one of the best things I've ever done. And it really had there was no justification for it looking good other than we just planned it out, and there just wasn't much to it but the essence. I'm really in love with the simple look. Another one that I did that just turned out great was the Italian singing group Il Volo, which we did live from the ruins of Pompeii.
Wow.
It was unreal, and all sorts of local restrictions on what we could do with, 2,000-year-old venue architecture, if you can call it that. And somehow it ended up looking great because we did just what was necessary. That was a long list, but we did just what we needed, and it just ended up looking fantastic. And I stand back and I look at those things, and I think about the opportunities I've had to design with enormous budgets where things can just naturally get out of hand and overdone. And I like the simple stuff better.
That's really interesting. That seems to be a common answer for lighting designers, that we all go back to simplicity, that we all go back to very direct looks with not a lot of equipment or not a lot of angles. A quick question about the Pompeii gig. Was that done in the amphitheater of Pompeii? like what Pink Floyd did many years ago there?
No, it was completely on the opposite side of that whole area. So it was actually a tiny amphitheater with a stage that had to be reinforced, and the natural seating in the three-quarter round, and those little scenic, the scena that was like a stone wall about 15 feet upstage. And everything, of course, was ground supported.
That's an amazing little amphitheater, because they do have that small one. And Stan, you were there with me. Did you come to Pompeii?
Actually, I have been visiting while Jeff is speaking. When we were in Italy a couple of years ago, we went to Herculaneum, which is smaller than Pompeii. And we were planning on going to Pompeii, but we couldn't make it. But that's a smaller area. And there was these sort of very intimate arenas that we saw at Herculaneum, and I would imagine the ones at Pompeii were similar.
Yeah, I think the ones at Pompeii, the one that Jeff's talking about, is a little larger.
Could be.
But it is very intimate feeling.
Yeah.
Especially compared to the big amphitheater where Pink Floyd was at.
Yeah, that's a massive space. Anyway, I don't know enough about it. My wife sure does, but it's fascinating. I would love to. Is that work that you did, Jeff, available? Is it on a DVD or online anywhere that we could see?
It was a PBS special, so possibly it's in their library of video on demand.
Jeff, this is Steve in Dallas. Can you talk a little bit about things that have really excited you over the years that you've been working?
Well, I've been really lucky to see a technological progression from, the solitary Lico, Fresnel, and Parr all the way through to the automation that we have today. So that was pretty darn exciting. I had my first demo with VariLites in the early 80s, knew I wanted them, was given the okay to include them in the Styx Kilroy Was Here Tour, which was maybe the third or fourth tour to go out with VariLites, period. They can correct me, but I'm pretty sure it was Genesis and Diana Ross and ZZ Top and maybe somebody else and us. So we were pretty early on and figuring it out as we went along. But the possibilities at that point seemed as limitless as it still seems today. And when we think that we've seen it all, somebody comes up with something new. So that's been pretty exciting. But I've had a lot of great moments in my career. Some had to do specifically with lighting, and some were a byproduct of lighting. To be there to witness Springsteen's jump from big star to megastar on the Born in the USA tour, that was a ride that I don't think everybody gets to take, and it was a lot of fun. And we knew that we were in the midst of something very special, and he was young and full of energy, and he still is today. And of course, those early shows with Styx were very, very exciting back in the day when we really could indulge in all the theatricality. People weren't jaded to that sort of thing at that time, and suddenly having all of that automation. And, at that time, Styx was determined to be the most popular rock band in America by the Gallup poll in the late 70s and early 80s. So that was a rush. Working on the Olympics, working on a Super Bowl halftime, all of those things have, just really been very, very special to me. And all the work and lighting that's gone into it. I probably realized pretty early on working with bar bands shortly after I got out of school, that I somehow had an eye that I never realized I did. The stakes were different and the requirements were different. Everything that we'd been taught in school about the lighting is not supposed to be noticed. If they walk out whistling the lights, you failed.
That's the theater view.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And, the closest you got to special effects were thunderstorms and ghost scenes and things like that. And suddenly it was, no, we want the lighting to be completely out front, visible. Sometimes it was actually making up for less animated performers on stage. And so the show was the lighting with some musical accompaniment. Not really.
With EDM now, that's sort of the case because you just have, somebody up there as a DJ playing the music and the lighting is like everywhere, in the audience everywhere.
Exactly. And I mean, I never fooled myself into thinking that the lighting was taking over from the performance, but we were working hand in hand on a lot of shows. So that was fun. And for me, I suddenly realized I had a little something that I didn't realize I did, and just figured I was going to, take that ride as far as I could. And here I am. Ringo Starr, wow, what an amazing thing. Growing up with the Beatles being something very removed and remote and high up there on the top of the mountain, and then suddenly having Ringo walk into our rehearsals for the first time, seeing him there in the flesh, that was a very dizzying moment for me. And I've the Pompeii job, I've had a lot of great experiences, and it's been fun to see my own progression as I understand a little more. I'm learning all the time. I'm not there yet. I'm going to keep doing it until I can't do it no more.
Right. That's great, Jeff. So you started out as a theatrical lighting designer.
That's what I thought.
As a theater lighting designer?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
Because you went to Northwestern.
That's right.
The coldest place on earth, by the way, Northwestern.
Oh, it was.
Absolutely.
It was.
It is frigid there.
Yeah. I mean, there were those days where the wind was just blowing us backwards.
Oh, my God. Well, did you play in bar bands as well early on in your life?
Well, when I was in high school, I played a lot of college gigs and high school gigs. We weren't really supposed to be playing in bars. I think we may have a couple of times, but mostly doing the college and the high school circuit. It was enough to keep me busy. I was in school. I was hoping to go to college, so I didn't want to get too far away from that. But my friends and I put this band together and had a lot of fun doing it.
Right, and you played keyboards.
Yeah, well, it started out as accordion, believe it or not, because that's what we could afford, and that's what we had room for in the place I lived. And then one day we just, said, come on, let's up the game, and I got one of those Farfisa organs, which had a great sound. Why did I get rid of that thing?
What was the name of your band?
The first iteration was the Wayfarers, and then we called ourselves Glass Tree.
At least it wasn't the phlegm tones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there was that sudden trend to names that were singular, and so we thought, let's come up with something, some complete non sequitur, just like everyone else is doing. So,
Right.
Absolutely. But let's get back to equipment for a second. You said your first organ was a Farfisa.
Oh, yeah.
That was my first organ. I played a mini compact. That was my first Farfisa.
Me too. Hey, maybe you bought mine at my garage sale about 15 years ago.
And then after that, I went to a Hammond M101. And then I went to a Hammond C3, then a Hammond B3. Did you play Hammonds on stage?
I only played them when they were available. Occasionally I did, but no, I never actually owned one.
I have another question about equipment because you did mention about the genesis and the amazing journey of equipment that you experienced and how exciting it was to use those first VariLites. What excites you now as far as new equipment?
We're almost desensitized to it because it comes at us so fast and furiously.
Yeah, it's true.
But I'm excited by what's happening in the LED world and, experimenting with mixing color. I spend a lot of time mixing color, especially for television. And so I'm liking what I'm seeing in the new LED profiles that are coming out. A lot of it is whiz-bang stuff, and it's fun to play with those things and put them in, dark corners of the stage where they can, create nice eye candy. A lot of the lights just are improving with their beam and field and all the tricks they can do as well. So, I like lights that can light something. that I'm not afraid to put on someone's face or on a piece of scenery. But like all of us, I like lights that just look cool in the background as well. Without naming any specific product, because right now you asked me this, I'm going through the Rolodex and, website in my brain trying to think of something. There's so much.
Yeah, it's more like the technological changes. Like Clay Paky just came out with this new laser light that they used on the Super Bowl halftime show. It has a very specific use, but that's sort of a new technology that they're using in a moving light. So there's a lot of weird things out there that are happening, especially in the TV world, because I was always wondering how you felt about LED taking over television lighting, considering color rendering and things like that. Do you find that a challenge, or do you feel that the product is good enough?
Yes, both. There was a time when I would never use LEDs on somebody's face. They were fine to light some scenery or to look interesting in the background. Now, of course, with the amount of R&D and the amount of innovation that's gone into developing those lights, there are so many that are superior to anything we've had in the past in terms of color mixing. You learn how to do additive color mixing, and it can be a challenge, but some of the lights have algorithms in them that help you dial in exactly what color you want, double check it with the meter, do a little tweak, and man, it's great.
Jeff, you're very active in lighting education. What do you love about teaching?
Mostly, for me, it's about helping young people cut the corners that I wasn't able to cut when I was coming up and learning about the business and learning about the art form. I think that there's a lot to be said for helping people get past some of the nuts and bolts, get them to the point where they can start applying all of that to their designs. And I think it's better for the art form. I think it's better for the business, and it's just going to move things along that much faster. I think there was a time when we really had no choice but to kind of learn it on the job, figuring it out as we went, falling on our face. And, I do believe that failure is one of the best teachers, but I also think that there's a lot to be said for helping people get from point A to point B the fastest way. So I enjoy doing that. And especially as I get older, as I've done it more and more, and I see my own eye developing just sort of naturally. I don't think it's anything special about me. I think anyone who's done it, as long as I have, really does begin to discover that you're naturally understanding things that you didn't understand 5, 10, 20 years ago. I'm proud to say that my eye has developed much, much more than it was. And if I can help somebody understand some of those strange concepts, maybe a little bit of the science, maybe a little bit of the art, and then get on with it.
Yeah, the development of the eye, I think, is one of the most important things that we do as teachers. That's sort of help. That's what it all comes down to at the end of the day.
And it's so hard to comprehend at one point in your life.
Yeah. I want to say something about Jeff, because Jeff and I are both LA guys now, and I do a lot of these educational things here in LA. And every educational event that has to do with lighting, I've seen Jeff at. He really is committed to education. And we actually about a week and a half ago, Jeff and I did the Chauvet workshop. And it was great because, as I explained, I think in last week's show, the students, there are 3 teams, 3 schools. The students present their work, and then there's this amazing group of designers watching it and then giving feedback to the students after their projects. And Jeff, of course, always has great things to say, and he knows also how to handle teaching and what the right thing to say to a student. That's very positive. And it was really funny, Jeff, when you said something very funny at this last one. It says that all 3 teams that showed the work, we didn't see one gobo in any of their works. And Jeff asked, was that a conscious decision? And they were all just sort of like saying, well, I don't know. We just didn't think about it. We didn't think it was needed. But what do you think about this, Jeff? You think this is a new trend that's happening with young students, that they're getting away from templates and gobos?
I don't know. I mean, I have not necessarily seen that as being a trend. I'm the broadcast lighting consultant at Coachella every year. Not this year, because it's been canceled or postponed. But I see a lot of shows, and it seems like there's still still grabbing those gobos, and sometimes it's just to blast it into people's eyes, and sometimes it's to create a texture on stage. But everybody's show is a little unique, and some do and some don't. I was just surprised, and I have a feeling that the students that we saw last week were just so overwhelmed with everything they had to do. I wouldn't be surprised if they just forgot.
It was interesting. It really was. Now, when you work on a big event like Coachella, how do you deal with the different lighting designers that you're working with for all these different acts?
I beg, I cry, I plead, I do you call up every bit of psychology that I can muster, because as we know, half of lighting design is psychology. But no, I work with all of them, and I don't really have the authority to make anybody do anything, but I try to explain what's going to happen out there in the webcast world. It's webcast all over the world, and they estimate that it's well over 40 million views throughout the world. And so I try to impress upon them that we can find a way to make their show work and also tweak it so that it works for the camera. The camera can see it one way or the other if there's any light on stage at all, but can it look interesting? Does it make sense? Does it give the people out there in webcast land the same feel that it's giving people that are there in the arena? And sometimes you have to adjust things a little bit to make it look that way. So I try to explain that to them. Some of them are on board, some not. Some of them are way ahead of me and they already know just what to do, and it makes my job easy. Some of them tell me, my band says not to light them. And that's a frequent theme.
Yeah.
No light on the performers.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about that a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact. We're the performers. We see everything else. We see the audience, that's for sure.
Yeah, those students that we saw last week totally forgot about the performers.
Totally forgot about the band. All three of those teams. And there were instruments on the stage, too. But I forgot who mentioned it and said, maybe we need mannequins.
Right.
So they say, yes, there are people up there. I think that was a really good suggestion.
Exactly.
So, Jeff, you are one of a select few people who can take live stage work and translate it to television. It's kind of a specialty when you think about it. Can you talk a bit about this? And who were your mentors?
Well, I believe in the philosophy that a well-designed live entertainment show for television can look as good on camera as it can to the audience in the venue. And so I kind of live by that credo, and I believe that paying attention to some of the core principles of angle, simplicity of numbers, quantity of lights on each individual performer, a foreground, a middle ground, a background, taking all of that into consideration, I think you can tweak a live show, make it look great for television, and the audience absolutely has no idea that it's being adjusted for TV if you do it correctly. What's wrong with good balance and pleasing angles? And all the cueing can still be there. So that's kind of where I begin. I know what the principles of good lighting design are, and really those aren't mutually exclusive with the good principles of lighting for live versus lighting for television. There's a lot of crossover there. So if you just adjust some angles, adjust some colors to be a little bit more camera friendly, and in some cases, for artistic reasons, maybe no color adjustment needs to happen. Ultimately, I just need to be realistic about these shows, and I need to be in the real world. Not every performance style requires absolutely traditional skin tone color, especially if the color is interesting and it still adds some form and shape. If you have good video engineers, they can take care of some of the oversaturation that in the past made the cameras go a little crazy. It's not nearly the issue that it used to be. And I think you can end up with a beautiful looking show if you just kind of develop your eye to see what's going to look good in the close-up. The big difference between the live show and the televised show is that there's a close-up, and everyone in the audience is pretty much in the front row, if not standing right on stage, nose to nose with the performer. So if you just remember that when you're that close, things look a little different than when you're 400 feet away, you can come up with a solution that works for both. So that's kind of where I start, begin, and end.
Yeah. It's interesting. You were talking about the technology changing in lighting, but also in video. You're able to get away with so much more contrast nowadays because people have better television sets.
That's right. But it still doesn't substitute for angles that work good in close-up and a reasonable amount of balance so that one person isn't 20 times brighter than the person standing next to them, because the cameras can't really handle that. So if you just balance things out, so you still have your dominant things in the picture, but not quite as exaggerated as you might do for a live show. And that might be the one difference. The live show lighting designers that want to put 4 follow spots and 27 Sharpies on one person and then no light on the person standing next to them, they get very disappointed if you say, well, I think we need to somehow balance this out. But once they do, really, it doesn't look so bad.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. And, looking at your shows, because I've seen so many of your shows, you're right. The angle, you really have that down. How to shape a person on television, which is basically a 2-dimensional medium, and make them look so 3-dimensional. And you do it with angle and color. And it's really quite brilliant, I must say.
You talked about the close-up versus the wide shot. Is there anything other than just looking at the TV monitor in comparison to what you're seeing from a different location to that, sort of balancing those two ideas, the close-up versus the wide shot or the long shot?
Well, one of the things that we have, the advantage that we have in a multi-camera shoot, the lighting designer has a router or a switcher that allows you to see every camera. That's something that the live audience doesn't have also. I get to see all of the strange angles that they, who are only watching it from one point of view, don't get to see. So that's how you go from the close-up to the wide shot to the cross shot to the reverse shot coming from behind them, looking over their the performer's shoulder and seeing the entire expanse of the audience, all of those different things. And you'd have to doctor up each one and make sure that it's like a full composition, that there's something in the frame everywhere. Yeah. And that doesn't mean light everywhere, but it just means creating some sort of a composition so you're not in a wide shot with a little postage stamp of light somewhere in the bottom right.
So you're looking at multiple monitors and making your lighting work regardless of what angle it's being shot from. And that seems like a pretty cool thing to know how to do.
And it's a trick, too, because, we all are jealous of the cinematographers that get to work single camera, where they can set up a perfect shot for that one camera shot and for that scene, and then cut, relight it. So if you've ever noticed in concert movies where they're blasted with backlight when you're watching them from the front, and then suddenly they cut to a reverse shot, and there's no backlight on them at all because they just want to see that follow spot hitting them coming from the front of house. Well, we can't do that. So that's a frustration, that we really have to be all things to all cameras at all times.
That's magic to me. That's a magical ability.
That's right. So sometimes there's compromise.
Yeah, of course.
Real quick before we move on to the next question, Jeff, who were your mentors when it came to learning how to light for television?
I've had a number of mentors over the years. Some of them didn't know they were my mentors because I never really had the opportunity to assist anybody. I got into the design world pretty early on in my career, and I didn't really have an opportunity to latch on to someone as a protege, so to speak. But over the years, I've managed to study and observe a lot of people. When I partnered up with Jim Moody a number of years ago to start one of our various design firms together, Jim is a very generous teacher with his knowledge, and he had a lot of it and was already way ahead of me in the television world, and was extremely forthcoming with his knowledge. But I had opportunities to talk to a lot of great people. Alan Branton and I have been friends way back to his early concert-only days. And he's very articulate and also very forthcoming. And I've just spent a lot of time just staring at his beautiful work. Same thing with Bob Dickinson. We're friends, but really I've seen everything that I can of his work, and when we have the opportunity to talk, he is also, extremely verbal about his passion and his techniques. And of course, I've admired and studied the work of the godfather of television lighting, Bill Klages. But, I'd have to say that my college professor, Delbert Unruh, who only taught from a theater point of view, really opened my eyes to what was possible out there and gave me grounding that I still think about to this day.
That's cool to hear. I didn't know you were a student of Delbert's. He was a reviewer for my tenure many years ago. Wasn't he? I think he was at Kansas ultimately. Was he at Northwestern when you were there?
That's right. He finished up his career in Kansas.
In Kansas, yeah. That's when he did a review of my work, and he was very, very thoughtful and very generous and very kind and articulate as well about my work. That's really great to hear.
And he's a talented designer in his own right.
I bet. Yeah, I've never seen his work, but I'm sure he was. Yeah.
Okay, so Steve has our last question of the day.
Well, Jeff, I was looking at your bio here again, and you have really spent some time with some major artists. You've built relationships with them that, realistically have lasted a lifetime, or at least an artistic lifetime. How did you do that? How have you managed to be this person and maintain these connections?
Well, being very lucky would be the starting answer. I began to work with Styx when I was very young, and I brought something to their show that I don't believe were anticipating, because I only really knew how to do one thing. I was still figuring out how to transition from theater to concert lighting, which I had sort of moved into unexpectedly, and I lit my concerts like I would light theater, and the same sort of checklist of who, what, where, why, and when. And when I brought that to Styx, it seemed to, fortunately, just click with them. They were kind of a theatrically oriented band, just in the way they choreographed themselves and the stories in their music. Dennis DeYoung, who was one of their primary songwriters and one of the lead singers, really enjoyed picking my brain, and I enjoyed picking his, and we would develop these stage productions for rock shows that were unusual for that period of time. They allowed me to spend a little bit of money doing it, but we were on the road 12 months a year in very close quarters, not a social distance at all. And so we had quite a lot of time to talk to all of them. And all the band members were so talented and all had kind of a different style. So I came out of that with a style of my own that I probably had not anticipated I would ever have. So jump forward a few years and the opportunity to work with Bruce Springsteen. Here you have an extremely driven performer whose solo vision really created what he does, along with the E Street Band and all the musicians he's ever worked with. And, he's a determined guy and with a lot of vision. And I mean that, all the best possible ways. So that perfectionism that he has and that drive, that rubs off on everyone and inspires everyone who works for him. And in those early days, and even so to a lesser extent now, because we have a little bit more of a mental telepathy going between each other now, but in those days we were getting to know each other, and we would spend a lot of time just talking about what could happen and why it was happening, and I would have an idea, and he would throw an idea. Sometimes we'd disagree. He always won. But those were defining moments for me, and they were learning moments. So I suppose when you nurture a relationship like that with Styx and with Springsteen, with a lot of the other performers that I've been lucky enough to work with. Steely Dan was a dream come true, and although they weren't very interested in talking about production, they were so creative that spending 5 minutes around them, the ideas would begin to flow, and they were a dream band for me to work with because I loved them so much when their first albums came out. And so that's, when you kind of nurture a relationship like that, suddenly you find yourself having done it for 30 or more years.
It's funny you go that way, and I promise you I'm not making this up. I saw that early Styx work. I didn't know that it was you at the time, obviously, but I remember when I was watching it, I kept thinking, I'm seeing something different, I'm seeing something theatrical, I'm seeing something I hadn't seen before. And it was really, it's always stuck with me, that early work of Styx.
Well, that's great to hear. Those were fun days, and we were kind of making it up as we went along, just in terms of the aesthetics that we were creating and wanting to see how far we could push it. But, we wanted to make it not just another rock show.
I may even have the honor of having you yelled at me one time as I was a follow spot operator.
I'm sure I did that.
What the heck? Oh, yeah, it's like, what the heck? That's not a guitar, that's a bass. So,
wait, what city was that in? Because I remember every show and every follow spot operator.
Oh, I bet you do.
No way.
You do. That one where I was working was in Johnson City, Tennessee.
Remember it well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I think that was Bandit Lights was sending gear up there for you, too. I was just so happy to be making $6 an hour.
Yeah. But, right after I yelled at you, you got a lot better.
Hey, something to remember by. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us on our 3rd anniversary show. You're truly legend of light. You can join the other legends. You get nothing for it except for a coffee cup. That's all you get.
Wonderful. I'll cherish it.
It doesn't have your name on it, but all we can tell you is thank you so much. You are a great person, obviously a great lighting designer, and also a great educator. And I want to thank you. I'm sure you've been thanked many times for giving back to the students. And we cannot wait for what comes out next. You've got so much knowledge, and we can't wait to read your book because we need this book. And the students, the lighting designers of tomorrow need the book. And finally, I want to thank a fellow keyboard player who played in bar bands like I did and had the first organ, the same organ I had, a Farfisa mini compact. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next event here. Hopefully it'll be like Showcase West or something like that. So we'll see.
I hope so. Well, thank you. It's been a real honor, a real pleasure talking to you.
When's the book coming out?
Sometime before the end of the year.
Wow, that's great.
And, I'm writing it with Jim Moody, just so I get that in there. Here's a guy who has, already written 4 or 5 books, and he's really shepherding the two of us through the process so brilliantly.
Well, that's so great. Well, the sound of the Luminoids, soon to be joined by keyboard player Jeff Ravitz, tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Alive Design Online, just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org, where you can find all our Legends of Light interviews, and be sure to follow us on our Facebook group page and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. That way you won't miss 1 second of crazy Lumen insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
If you decide to litigate, the law firm of Flecht, Flock, Glare and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are even further depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Los Angeles, Gainesville, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to tune in next week when we discuss more crazy things that are happening in the lighting industry.
All that and a new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So see you all next Saturday where we start our 4th season of Light Talk. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
So long,
Thanks,
everybody,
Jeff.
and happy anniversary.
Light Talk.
Lumen Brothers.